Howdy. So did it work? Okay. If we have connectivity problems, they will be brief and just stay on the link and it will reconnect on Elon Musk net, which is how we're coming to you from today. This is my vacation week, so I'll be doing this a couple times to get it right, lighting and all that. Like that right there. It just did it. Not a fan, but this is the way it is. Is there any flicker? Are you getting flicker with your liquor? Okay, good. I should report that I really, really like the Starlink. It's a absolute night and day difference between the internet that I had, a month and a half ago versus now. So really, really cool. Really, really like it. I'm going to experiment tomorrow by taking it on the road, taking it because it's an RV mount and it has a little quad leg thing. And it seems pretty easy to pick it up and use an external power source and take it on the okay. Trying to figure out whether my tablet is the way to go to read questions, or if I should just read them off the screen. Do you think you would be able to share your screen at some point in the future? Yeah, I think so. There's a couple ways to do that. And that'll be an experiment, I think, for later this week. Chris Knox says, I used your Starlink hack to get Starlink RV. It arrives in a week. Yeah, true. Isn't that something? It's cool. Yeah, I had to cancel the home thing because that was coming like in. Oh, wait, let me mute me. Because I annoy me. Shut up, me. If you're just getting here, we'll start at 4 with questions and stuff. If it does that little hiccup that it just did, just stand by. It'll reconnect. A little annoying. A friend of mine who used to be on Patreon, I was asking her, by the way, great Twitter follow. She's there in LA and in West Hollywood. But Bridget Phetasy, Phetasy. And she's on. Yeah. Anyway, like that. So if it does that, just as you see, just stand by. Okay, there you go. One really cool thing about the Starlink is that my uh, my kid and I are going to probably go down to the Oregon coast, maybe tomorrow, maybe Tuesday. And if we do, we'll go to the Tillamook Air Museum, and I'll be able to bring this along. And the thing is, where I am in my super secret compound, there's really tall trees. So if I can get somewhere like on the beach or in Tillamook at the the World War II Aviation Museum, I'll get just a crazy, signal, like a 300 meg, 400 meg signal. It's nuts. Because I used to, I had satellite internet. I don't know if we packed it. I'm going back to LA. I do have to get back there because I've got 3 cars to sell. If anyone wants to buy a Volvo S40, 2010 Volvo S40 with about 140,000 miles on it. It's a good driver, good mileage, needs a catalytic converter by now, I'm assuming. 2004 Land Rover Discovery. I'll practically give it away to you. A 2004 Suburban. It'll be a good weekend for Cars for Kids, I think. Ukrainian HIMARS took out a Russian S-300 missile system. These are the two different vehicles. These are the silos. It has 4 launchers that rest vertically like this on the truck, and when it gets to a firing position, it goes and leads them up. So that's what those nose are. And this is the data truck. This is the so a system is 1 or 2 fire direction command trucks, and then 2 launchers with 4 missiles each, and then there's a reload truck. And it's a very capable system. This is the thing, the Russians were so tight for money in the 90s, and this is their lead, their number 1 air defense system. They sold one to Greece. They sold one to a NATO country. And it's still a big seller. The Iranians bought them. So the Israelis have been training for attacking Iran for years against the Greek S-300 system. Now, have they upgraded the software? Maybe, maybe not. But if they did, they tend not to export that. No matter who you are or whether or not you paid cash, the Russians don't export that. If you're wondering, it is White Claw. Though I might go upstairs and make myself something a little more vodka-y. So I will be AFK, BRB. So we'll start the live here. Though we've been live for 20 minutes, 30, 15 minutes. If anyone shows up, tell them that I'm AFK, BRB, GNT. I'm back. I'm just off camera. Too much light. Maybe. Oop, look at that, 403. All right, everybody. All of you how are we going to light on? Let's do that. Welcome. If you guys are here, this is sort of a test. I'm not sure what time works best for all of you in that top tier. First of all, thank you for being a big kahuna / salty bastard. And so now I'm back. I just reconnected. That was me, not you. So with that LED light on, you like that? If I'll do a poll on Patreon. If Sundays works, Sundays at 4, Sundays at 5, then I would like to make the live thing a regular thing so that people can see it consistently, because you're kind of expecting that so that we can have this little two-way. So we'll see what works. A couple things. I'll decorate the Dark Secret Cave. My plan is to have maps and stuff like that back there, so that I can do a two-shot where I can have the camera on the maps and I can point on maps, or do a screen share with Google Earth and things like that. So we'll do that. We'll work it out. It's funny because I've been looking at other. It's kind of weird. Like the Patreon sort of has this. Hey, do you want to see best practices from other, from other people? Well, a lot of people are not broadcasters, and I think that ultimately a live stream, it's not TV. It's got more to do with like local live TV, and it has to do with, getting some, compelling, visual enough content. Anyway, I didn't really formatic anything out today. I'll give you a update on Ukraine as of today. The Russians and Ukrainians, signed that grain deal, and they announced it Friday morning around 9 a.m. Pacific time. And then the Russians promptly violated it. The idea being that, as you see, the Russians from Mariupol to the mouth of the Dnieper River, the delta of the Dnieper River, they have cut off Ukraine's access to the sea except through the port of Odessa, as seen here. So did everybody see me zoom in? Here, let me orient you to my map. This is the world. Many of you are there. I am there. Ukraine is here. This is north. This is south. So now we zoom in into our Ukraine view. And our vice president tells me that Ukraine is a country in Europe. And this is it here, right? It borders on Romania. Here is Russia. Real Russia, sovereign Russia is here. Occupied Russia since 2014 is the Crimean Peninsula, as seen here. And then the DNR, the Donetsk People's Republic, or Donetsk Narodno Republic, and the Luhansk People's Republic, or the LNR, the Luhansk Narodno Republic. So since the war began, the Russians initially had everything here in gray, and then they gave it up, including the ill-fated air assault, I should say. They didn't parachute in. They helicoptered in to the Hostomel airport, which is the Antonov aircraft factory. They couldn't hold it. The entire point there was to take Kiev in a coup de main. They couldn't do it because they didn't secure the airport. They landed at the airport. They took it for a few hours. By the end of the day, the Ukrainian army had a quick reaction brigade, not a QRF with like 20 guys with nothing to do and just, wanking, watching Xbox. They had a quick reaction brigade standing by around Kiev. And by the end of the day, they had gotten to Hostomel, killed and captured hundreds of Russian airborne guys, VDV, Voiska Desantnik, Vertolyot, the Russian airborne, the Vadeva, captured and killed hundreds of them. They couldn't hold, then their entire plan was to hold the airport, fly in reinforcements that day. So put off a day. By day 2, they didn't own the airport anymore. So since they couldn't do that, the land forces already moved in. They didn't do well. The airborne guys that did land are the ones who went into Bucha, which is right here. They were slaughtered. They were killed. But in the meantime, Kiev was dealing with this whole invasion here. And then through some, pretty hard fighting, they were able to blunt these guys to the point where, by late May, the Russians abandoned this and then concentrated on their larger war aims, which was to take this majority Russian area of eastern Ukraine, and if they could, extend it to the Dnieper River and take this entire area to the Dnieper River. So anyway, with the reorientation of the offensive this way, they've been stuck in a loop now for a month, and they've been shooting the shit out of artillery and then trying to follow up the next day with infantry assaults, and nothing's worked. They have only made incremental advances here in this area. These downward-facing bombs all represent Russian artillery emphasis day by day. This is 14 hours ago. All along, these correspond to command. See, the combined arms army of the central group is this part here. So when you see these yellow, you know, markers here, this means that this entire area here had barrages up and down it, you know, and this is about, let's call this about 30 miles, okay? So this is Santa Clarita to Burbank, if you're in the LA area. If you're not, that's 30 miles. They then follow up hours later or the next day with a infantry assault somewhere. These inevitably fail. They've been doing this every single day for the past month and a half. It's total coyote and sheepdog shit. They've been doing the same attack plan every single day. So what about the northern group? Well, same deal, 14 hours ago. So you understand how they're all timing this around 4 a.m. local time in Ukraine, which is like GMT +3, right? So they're here on the West Coast, it's 11 hours ahead. So they've been timing these assaults with the thinking that, well, okay, the northern group, the central group, and the southern group, we're all going to overwhelm them with our artillery at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and then around 11 a.m., our infantry are going to move in and assault them. But they've been failing. They've been doing the same thing every single day. Today was no different. They made no advances. Here, now this is what's interesting. Here in the south, with the southern group, you know, again, same thing, 14 hours ago. They all coordinate their artillery. This is where the Ukrainians have been fighting back and taking back territory. This gray represents areas that the Russians didn't abandon this. They took it, and then the Ukrainians have been pushing them back. Just to give you HIMARS, because even though it has the range to go far into Russia, it doesn't need to. They operate around here. From here, they can hit targets here. Like for instance, what they're doing. The Ukrainians are trying to drop a bridge. See, the Russians are on this side of the Dnieper. They're trying to drop a bridge here so that Russians can't be resupplied with reinforcements or ammunition on this side. That would force the Russians backwards to cross the Dnieper. And by the way, the Dnieper here at the delta, the mouth, it's a navigable, very wide river. You know, bridges ruled the day. There was not a mobile pontoon bridge that will allow a controllable ford here. So with HIMARS, they're trying to render a bridge here, a 4-lane bridge, reinforced concrete bridge, inoperable. And it's so far working. Only motorcycles and foot traffic can cross this bridge now. So the Ukrainians today even said, hey, we're making headway down south, because the way it works with a river is really no different than a strait, like the Taiwan Straits. If you control the mouth of the river, you control the river. The Dnieper is a navigable river all the way past Kiev. You can take a boat up the mouth of the Dnieper, and there's so many reservoirs and dams and canals that you can go past Kiev up here. So grain, this is how they get grain to silos here on the Black Sea, is put it on flatboats. Here and here. And so if you control the mouth of the river, you control the river. So this is why the Ukrainians are, their main effort defensively now is to take back the mouth of the river, because the Russians here are not making gains, and they're not affecting, the movement of harvest to the grain silos here. The the DD, the memorandum of understanding that the Russians signed with the Ukrainians through the UN on Friday. Wait a second. Is to allow Turkish Navy ships to escort grain shipments from Odessa. The Ukrainians have been moving and trucking their grain to Odessa. The problem is these elevators were supposed to be empty. They were supposed to be empty in June. This grain was supposed to be on ships, heading to Ghana and Nigeria and all that back in June. So the elevators are still full. So they need to empty those. But the Russians have mined this area so thoroughly that frequently swimmers in Odessa are actually swimming into mines, hitting mines, big giant Gilligan's Island, floating mines. So anyway, this is part of the rhythm of the harvest. This is where the tyranny of time really comes in and has an effect on, global food. Again, Ukraine's the 5th largest wheat exporter in the world. Russia's the number 1. The Western sanctions on Russia prevent any Western EU nation from buying their grain. It isn't stopping China and India. But then again, remember our little fun fact here that China owns 11% of Ukraine. They don't own the mountains and the forests. They own 11% of the arable wheat harvest land. So there's that. So anyway, you can expect, because fall comes pretty early there. By late August, it's raining here, and so for the Ukrainians, they want to, when the fall comes, they need their harvest in elevators, in silos here and here. If they can secure the delta of the Dnieper River, that would be even better. So anyway, the American HIMARS and British provided HIMARS, high mobility artillery rocket system, they're operating this area, and part of the reason we know this is because the Ukrainians shot a drone down over that area. So supposedly, information. Okay. Local information is that a drone was shot down. So obviously it's 1 a.m. there right now, but that probably indicates that the Russians are flooding the zone with drone. The HIMARS is so effective. The Russians have figured out that the point of origin of most of the rockets is here. So what the Russians are doing is they're countering by trying to, drop bridges and they know likely firing spots. The Ukrainians are smarter than that. They're not going to the same spot, over and over and over, but form follows function. They're not over here, because if they're here, they can't hit targets there. They can hit all kinds of targets here, but then the Russians are going to counter battery them into the fairly peaceful, western part of Ukraine. So they're staying in the fighting area, and they're shooting, there, they're shooting there, they're shooting there. So, Bill Ransom says, is Putin really dying? Our CIA director seems to say he's in pretty good health. There's no doubt that there was video of him sitting there with his Ministry of Defense Shoigu 3 months ago, and his hand, he was tremoring with his hand. Now, some doctors have said that's a side effect of certain medications. I don't know, but I do know that when he was in Tehran earlier this week on Monday, Tuesday, he didn't look sick. He looked pissed off because Erdogan made him wait a minute. So he doesn't look sick to beyond just his age. What is happening more and more is that some of the people closest to him are kissing his ass. And in the grand scheme of things for dictators, when people close to you start telling you that you're doing great, when you know damn well you're not, unless he's being lied to, and he's a guy who is trained and experienced in spotting lies. Whereas his Minister of Defense, Marshal Shoigu, is not. Shoigu is a soldier, and Gerasimov, the Chief of Staff of the Army, is a soldier. They're not trained in spotting lies. Putin is. And so, Putin, like any good commander, wants to know, what are the status of my forces? Why are we only gaining 1 foot a day here? What's going on? And he doesn't appear to be sick to me. So a couple of things, they began the war on February 24th with the with an army of conscripts. The meat on the bones of the Russian army are drafted. At any one time, half of them are within 6 months of getting out. The other half are within 6 months of just starting. Okay, so the last call up was April 1. So you go April, May, June, July, August, September. The next call up is going to be September 1. Well, the April 1 guys have only had 2 months to train and then deploy. They were barely given 3 weeks training, and then they were sent out as replacements to, armor, artillery, and infantry, the three big combat arms branches. Artillery, of those three, artillery is arguably one of the more technical, but they have NCOs and officers. The armor is a little different. In Russian tanks, because they have 3-man crews, all three positions are pretty critical. Driving a tank is not easy. To be good at driving a tank takes time. It takes a lot of time, a lot of gas, and a lot of good instruction. It took me a long time to be a good tank driver and then Bradley driver. Russian tanks have an auto loader. So unlike an American tank or a European, a German Leopard 2, a 2A6, well, these are two-seaters, exploding Prinny. Russian tanks don't have a entry-level position. If your kid enlists in the U.S. Army tomorrow to be a fresh lime, that's so key. Not lime juice. Got to have a real lime because you need the oil from the rind. Am I right? But on an M1A1, there's no auto loader unless the loader's name is Otto, O-T-T-O. On an M1A1, there's a human being who actually takes the round out of the bustle, turns it around, shoves it up the spout, and that's the entry-level position. So from the loader position, you sit there and you observe the commander and the gunner. And from loader, and you also are bouncing around the tank. So the entry-level position is loader. So you've done several hundred hours as a loader before you get in the driver's seat, and you'll get a bunch of driver time. So then you get in the driver's seat, and you already know what you're doing. Now you have to put hands on, and you've already done hours and hours, miles and miles in the driver's seat of an M1. So you're a pretty competent driver. From there, from driver, you go to gunner. And maybe someday when you're an E6, you'll be a TC, you'll be a tank commander, which is the greatest job, besides cavalry scout in the Army. There's nothing like being in the hatch of an M1 or a Bradley, zooming across, Yakima firing range at 40 miles an hour. It's just the shit, okay? Well, the Russians don't have that. They don't have that logical feeder. They have to be trained pretty intensely to be a gunner, a commander, or a driver. Oh, there's phenomenal M1 simulators. Yeah, but they don't. They simulate the pace of combat, but they don't really simulate the actual real deal when you're at Yakima or Fort Irwin and it's boiling hot, it's dusty, it's noisy. The hatches are open, and all that. Do tanks have levers and gears or steering wheels? The American M1 has a motorcycle grip. It's like a submarine commander's periscope. So you're sitting there like an F-16. You're back like 30 degrees, as seen here, with your head looking this way. And you're grabbing an upside-down T. And in your right hand is actually a motorcycle throttle. And that's how an M1 is steered. The armored personnel carriers, like the M113 or the Bradley, they literally have a steering wheel. The old school, the last American tank that had sticks, what's called a skid steer, was the M113, that box-like armored personnel carrier. The M113 Alpha 1, the first version, had sticks. And that's what I trained on. They're fucking nuts. And then you go to the A3. Yeah, so anyway, the has arguably the most comfortable seat in the history of the U.S. military. And oftentimes in the winter, you cannot get a Bradley driver out of that hatch. He'll sleep in there. He'll pee in there. If he brings a big enough bag, he'll poo in there. The M1 seat, super comfortable. It's like an F-16. You're back at 30 degrees and all that. Yeah, you do have to do engine management. You have to monitor oil pressure, fuel pressure. The M1 is a turbine, so you have to monitor exhaust temperature, things like that. But it's fairly complex. And then also the driver and the loader are the primary maintainers, and that's another big difference between us and the Russians. Tank maintenance. The reason we'll never get rid of a fourth crewman is because tanks are physical. Period. Physical. The track breaks, and if you have to repair track, believe me, you want a fourth guy. You do not want three guys. You cannot. And so this is something you learn with experience. That's why, at the minimum, an American tank commander, a Marine Corps tank commander, a Brit tank commander is an E6, a staff sergeant, because a staff sergeant's been around the block for a while, and he knows if they just cracked track, if they just threw a track at Fort Irwin, he knows if that's a 4-man job or a 2-man job, or whatever. And so anyway, this is something that is whole up. You can't take a bunch of 10-year-olds and say, get in there and read the placards and get it up and running. You could take a 10-year-old and park them in an M1A1 tank, and they should have it up in about a minute and a half. Okay, just by reading in order the placard, right? But from that point forward, without training, they're nobody. What was that? Aloha Suits, what is your opinion of the USMC divesting in tanks and arty? The Marine Corps, the current commandant of the Marine Corps, if you don't know this, he got rid of their tanks and most of their artillery, because he's seeing a island conflict very similar to maybe parts of World War II. He is orienting the U.S. Marine Corps for conflict in the Pacific against the Chinese right now. He is orienting them to operate in smaller groups with anti-ship missiles to be dropped on an island by Osprey, or whatever. History shows that inevitably, when you think too hard about what the next conflict will look like, you wind up fighting the last conflict. So it's not going to surprise me at all if the Marine Corps wishes they had tanks about a year from now. And in fact, there's a thing going on right now called the Generals Revolt. A bunch of retired generals are just inundating the Pentagon and the White House with letters saying this guy is nuts. A Marine Corps without tanks cannot take and hold terrain. Before World War II, the Marines thought, we're going to land, we'll surprise the enemy, we'll take the island, and then Bob's your uncle. Within 6 months, they were begging the Army for tanks. They were saying, we take terrain, we can hold it, we need tanks. Just for the record, by the way, there were far more soldiers in the Pacific than there were Marines, but the Marines kind of hold serve when it comes to PR stuff. There was way more Army in the Pacific than Marines, and the Army brought tanks everywhere, right? The Marines brought artillery and mortars, and they thought, well, who needs tanks? It's an island. Well, they were begging for tanks by the end of Guadalcanal. And so now, with that lesson learned, the current commandant of the Marine Corps is transforming the Marines, into some force that theoretically is supposed to, hold the Chinese. There's what they call the first island chain and the second island chain. And let me find that. Let me do that for you. Just so that we can, as long as we're sitting here drinking, thinking and drinking, let me orient you to the Pacific Ocean. Little thing we like to call the Pacific Ocean. Maps. All right. This is the United States of America. You are here, wherever you are. Yes, we're the good guys. This is the Pacific Ocean. As you see here, here's where I was born. It's called Hawaii. I was born at Kaiser Hospital in Oahu. You remember the start of Hawaii Five-0? And McGarrett is on top of a hotel, and that hotel is the Ilikai, and Kaiser Hospital is right next to it. So I'll just I'll have you just assume I'm telling the truth on that one. Anyway, there's Oahu. So meanwhile, out here in China, all right, we're back. Here is China, and they're the most likely, greatest threat. So I don't question the Commandant of the Marine Corps for orienting, much of his effort towards facing this threat. It doesn't mean that, the Persian Gulf has gone away. The northern flank in Finland against Russia has gone away. The Marines train very hard up in the Arctic in Norway every year. But this orientation is very specific to the Pacific. Wait, I have to toast myself for that one. So here's China. China has significant naval facilities on Yunnan. This is a province. This island here is called Hainan or Yunnan. In the Guangdong province, the so-called World's Factory, where 90% of your Christmas gifts are being made right now, if they can make it here. Huge naval bases here, Fuzhou, and all that. Obviously, they're oriented so that they can have access to Taiwan, the good guys, right? But if China wants to take Taiwan, they would have to first break out. They would need naval superiority around Taiwan. They would need to sweep the seas of American carriers, things like that. So we have what's called the first island chain. The first island chain, and again, here in the South China Sea, the Chinese have these man-made islands that are basically, fixed coral aircraft carriers. So the first island chain effectively goes like this. And by the way, here's Vietnam. The Vietnamese hate the Chinese. Never forget this. The Vietnamese hate the Chinese, hate them. The Chinese dominated Vietnam for several thousand years. Only about 1,000 years ago, or to the Vietnamese yesterday, did they get their independence from China. Anyway, they hate the Chinese. The first island chain effectively goes Vietnam, Spratly Islands, Philippines, to Japan, to Korea, right? So that's the first island chain. And they don't show up on Google Earth from 100 miles up. But if you zoom in, then you start seeing all these littoral, these are major islands. This island is the size of LA County, right? So you start seeing these different islands here that are either owned by the Philippines or owned by Taiwan, or are owned by Japan. So you see, when you zoom out, it looks like, oh, look at that. You can just sail there. Well, no. If you zoom in, you can see it is a chain of islands. And so if you harden them, if you defend them, which is what the Marine Corps, strategy here is, then you can prevent large capital ships, Chinese aircraft carriers from leaving. If you put Harpoon missiles, land-based missiles here, then and you can put. All right, we're back. That's Okinawa. This pisses the Chinese off that U.S. Air Force, Marine, and Navy combat facilities are there at Okinawa. So anyway, that's what the first island chain is, right? And this fences China in. The Chinese are concentrating right now on what's called the second island chain. And the second island chain, if you break through that, you have the Solomon Islands, New Guinea, etc., Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, and much of this are U.S. territories. There's Guam is up here, Tinian, all the Saipan, all that, right? Well, the Chinese have basically decided politically to skip the first island chain and begin affecting elections in the Solomon Islands here. This is where Guadalcanal, all these famous names from World War II are, and go right out to the second island chain and start affecting government. So here in the Solomons, this is where the Chinese recently, within the month, signed a treaty with the Solomon Islands for military assistance and basing rights. So all it takes is for the president of the Solomons to declare an emergency, and the Chinese will legally fly in thousands of troops to the Solomon Islands where they'll begin building a military base. And so that's the second island chain out here. And again, the Pacific looks barren and wet, but if you zoom in, you'll suddenly see all these American possessions in the Marshalls, Wake Island here, all these, and Guam there, and the Northern Marianas, which are American, Palau, which is American Samoa, and all that. So the Chinese are playing where they're bypassing the first. What they want to do strategically is have forces pre-positioned in the Solomons in the second island chain, so that they can totally cockblock, the U.S. Navy from Pearl Harbor, from the Philippines, from Guam, We base a lot of subs on Guam, B-52s, B-2s. We don't do a routine, regular rotation anymore. We now do a random bomber rotation to Guam. But the Chinese know that one of the things that we would do immediately in the outbreak of a likely conflict would be to move the bombers from Guam to Palau, Guam to the Marianas, or whatever. So anyway, this is what the Marine Corps is doing. This is the reason for that reorientation to more of an island defense thing. I think they should anyway, but giving up your tanks is really stupid. I understand putting your tanks in a reserve role, like the Marines have traditionally done, but I think giving them up altogether is just stupid. Can they be seen with plain old Google Maps? Yes, they can. Like I say, this is a function of, I'm zooming way out in space. If you zoom into Guam, now you see that the Marianas is a string of islands. We bombed North Vietnam from Guam, from Agana, the airbase at Guam. Most of the significant bombing in North Vietnam was done from Guam. Long flight, 8 hours to get to the target area, from there to there, and then back. But they did it. Mainly because they wanted to do it from American soil. Because we had been doing it from Thailand, the Thais were like, yeah. And so we wound up consolidating all bomber ops from Guam. And then, of course, you can go satellite. On Google Maps. This is not Google Earth. This is Google Maps. So just, and also one cool thing about this is that it shows you terrain underneath the waves. So as you see, the South China Sea is not that deep. It's not like the Atlantic, or even the Marianas Trench, the deepest place in the world, right there, right? This is not like that. What the Chinese have done is just danger reef. Is they have in the paracels just dredged up seabed and put and just built bases. And they have these silting beds. They'll dredge up stuff, drain it there, and then put it on dump trucks. And they built out it was about a 2-mile runway. Well, this is a Chinese base, one of 8 or 9. Okay. Every time the Chinese demand that you stay 12 nautical miles away, you're acknowledging that must be their legit territory. So what American, British, Japanese should do is actually sail within 12 miles. But this is a very typical Chinese base. They probably have several thousand guys here. There's a PT track. There's soccer. The Chinese love basketball. This is a 5-story barracks at an angle. Here's a parade ground. Solar. They're probably desalinating here. This is the dredging facility. So this thing is dredging. They're putting the coral and sand up there. They crush it, and boy, are they crushing it. And then they make runways. So this is just one of them. Let's see, what do we got there? Chinese copy of the Russian AN-12 Cub, I believe. It's a Y8. There's your tower. But see how new all this, looks? There's some early warning. There's some radar. Target. That ain't no mosque. There's lodging for the construction workers. You can see they're making barracks here. They're claiming all this. So that's going to be seeded, and all that. So that's what they're doing in the South China Sea. The Filipinos sued them and took them to International Criminal Court. And they won, but, to what end, right? So there's that one. Here's this one here. Wait, is it that one? No, they've gone even further south. This is where the Vietnamese get freaked, because there's bases right off Vietnam. And again, what I said 20 minutes ago, the Vietnamese fucking hate the Chinese. And these were low tide features. 20 years ago, these only showed up at low tide. So the Chinese invented, territory. Then you get closer to the Philippines, and this is what this went to the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea for, was the Scarborough Shoal. This here, the Scarborough Shoal, spelled like Joe Scarborough, that asshole, belongs to the Philippines. But the Chinese are fishing the shit out of this area. And the Philippines, a 200-mile economic zone, exclusionary zone. And that's the Philippines. That it's less than 6 miles from the Philippines. More visits by carriers to Vietnam. Yeah, we're doing that. We are doing that. Believe me. But anyway, so the Chinese have already broken out of the first island ring by building bases here. One of the world's largest submarine bases is here. And this is right out of James Bond. They built a sub base into a mountain. I mean, you literally sail your sub into the mountain. This is where their ballistic missile subs are. I have to get it right. Where is it? That ain't it. Is that it? Are you it? You're not it. I think you're it. No, you're not it. Oh, look what we got there. The Liaoning, number 17. This is carrier number 1. This was a Russian Navy carrier 30 years ago. The Kuznetsov. No, not the Kuznetsov. This is the Brezhnev. Then there's a electronic intelligence ship parked there. Standard deal, track. By the way, the Chinese love basketball, and they love basketball. So you'll notice there's no soccer fields here. There's 8 basketball courts. The Chinese love the NBA, and the NBA loves them, don't they? As a interpreter of photographic intelligence, this is sort of my purview. Wait, hang on. Should I turn God, I gotta find the super secret sub base. Oh, there it is. All right. So see this here. This is where their boomers, their ballistic missile submarines, go into this mountain to get their missiles, and then they come out that way. Now they might tie up right here, as this guy is. Beforehand, if there's a line, he'll tie up. If he's not ready to go out, he'll tie up. But to get the missiles, they go in that entrance right there. Now, if you take Google Earth and you tilt down, you can see it is a for real, Blofeld 007 cave. What they did was they excavated it. Where's the entry? Anyway, they excavated it, took all the guts out of this mountain, and probably made bases in the South China Sea with it. But this is a Navy base, not an Army base. Those islands are Army Air Force bases. This is a Navy base. So, and of course, there's one soccer field, and again, 4 basketball courts, more basketball, 3, 6, 12, lots of basketball. This picture was taken around noon, so the Chinese are working. No one's actually hooping it up. But as you see, so you have, they built 3 more. So you have, 3, 6, 9, 11, 13, 15 basketball courts, 1 small soccer field. Here's the barracks for the Chinese Navy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 floors, 9 or 10 floors. Hospital, more barracks over here, more basketball courts. This is, you can't hide anything from space. Basketball is huge in China. Now, because of the array of this, you can tell now you're getting officer housing here on this side of the base. There's a fountain, there's a place to relax, indoor gym here, better housing here, officers beach over here, another track. But whole lot, and this is again, a gigantic. I showed you this guy. This is an attack sub. Up here are 3 Chinese ballistic missile subs. Note the flat array. They copied our and the Soviet arrangement of the kilos, and then the American Poseidon and Polaris subs. Here's another guy there, another attack sub. So they, unlike the U.S. Navy, where like here, where I am, close to me is the Banger, didn't even know her, the sub base where the Ohio class ballistic missile subs come to drop off and take their missiles. This is not where attack subs come from. The Chinese clearly, they don't make any such difference. They'll put, ballistic missile with boomer. there. And so like I say, they don't deliver the missiles to the sub. The sub, you know, there's that guy. The sub goes blip, 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 blip. And he goes in there. So someone said, I can't keep up with your Google Maps game. Give me coordinates. Let me. So see what they've done is they've terraformed this into a harbor. You know, these were unconnected islands. They mitigated all the incoming waves by. So where do we see the Liaoning? Oh, here we go. Yeah, at this naval base here. So this is the 7 flanker, a navalized flanker with the wingtips folded up. See, because you can see a bit of shadow there. So he's on there, probably a dummy for the crews to practice. But this is a arrest gear. See the 4 arresting wires. See the tire marks. So this is a ski jump carrier. You land conventionally. If you miss, you keep going. There's a navalized helicopter, the Chinese version of the Mi-17. See the rotor back, you know, because you conserve space in a carrier. But this is a ski jump carrier. This is, you know, the bow. There's no catapults. You know, you get airborne by going full afterburner here and then releasing your brakes and going like that, right? So that means you cannot take off with the same load that an F-18 or an F-35 does off a catapult. Anyway, that's the Liaoning, formerly the whatchamacallit. But this is for anyone who wants to check this out on Google Earth or Google Maps, depending on the date of the imagery. And let me check the imagery here. Okay, well, this is taken in 2022, so this is fairly recent. Well, this is the south end of Hainan, or Yinan. The Chinese don't pronounce the H. This is Yinan. Zoom in at the south end, and then you scan these peninsulas, and they're all navalized. It looks lovely. Tourists can go there. The beaches are great. It's a huge vacation area for the Chinese. 2, as we were bombing Hanoi from Guam, our B-52s had to do a dog leg around Hainan to get to Hanoi and Haiphong. And the Chinese would alert them, but they would alert the Vietnamese very late because they, you know, and the Vietnamese don't like each other, but they were still brothers in communism. So anyway, all right, well, let's wrap it up. I'm going to wrap it up with a couple things here. On today's date, 1935, the B-17 prototype had a nose turret. It was called the Project 299, and 4 engines, very fast. It had a nose turret. Wait, I'm getting a picture. I should have had this. I'm stupid. Shit. Come on. Where's my picture? Well, anyway. Today in 1935, I know I tweeted it out, so let's do this. Okay, on this date in 1935, the first version, the first prototype of the 17. What the fuck? What are you talking about? What? Bullshit. Well, anyway, here's someone who took a picture. The first B-17 had a nose cannon, right? But at the time, as you see, it's July 24th, 1935. At the time, the weight and the aerodynamic burden too great. And the idea was, well, there's just no way that anyone's ever going to do a head-on attack. Well, by early 1943 in World War II, some 8 years later, the preferred lift, because of the lack of a nose turret, it was the Flying Fortress, and it had a turret, behind the cockpit. It had that famous ball turret underneath, tail gun, guns on the sides. But there was nothing pointing directly ahead. There was nothing that the bombardier could aim, directly ahead. To that, the Luftwaffe had discovered that the head-on attack was effective attack against the B-17. And there's a urban legend, or is it? By the way, the quintessential book on the air war in Europe is Masters of the Air by Donald Miller. Phenomenal book. Right now, as we speak, it's being produced by HBO into sort of like a Band of Brothers, multi-episode limited series about the air war in Europe. And if you didn't know this, the Air Corps, the U.S. Army Air Corps / Air Force, lost more Americans in the air over Europe than the Marine Corps lost in all the Pacific. True deal. And this, by the way, the B-17A didn't have a front-facing turret. The B, the C, the D, the E, or the F did not. They were all improvements to the aircraft. The final step that that Boeing did was the G model that did include twin 50s underneath the nose, even though in 1995 they rejected a single machine gun. But this chin turret, as it was called, from the head-on attacks that were, if they hit the cockpit and the bombardier section, especially the lead bomber, then the bombing mission failed. And the entire crew, 13 guys, either died or were captured. But bottom line, they were off the battlefield. There's a legend that certain B-17s landed with the famous ball turret, with the gunner in the ball turret. Is it an urban legend or not? It's not an urban legend. It's I'll show you the picture that Miller has was given to him by the Air Force Museum, and this is harrowing. A B-17 has that ball turret underneath, on the belly of the aircraft, right? Well, the commentator Andy Rooney that used to be on 60 Minutes, he was a sergeant in World War II, and he wrote a book called My War. And he claimed that he witnessed one time that a B-17 landed and it its gear. And the ball turret had failed, and the gunner couldn't get out. The only way out was to point the gun straight down and then go through a hatch. If the ball turret was turned any other way, the gunner couldn't get out, right? And so it's such a coffin corner, such a unlikely series of events that you can't get the gear down and the gunner can't get out. Urban legend. Well, it was not. Andy Rooney really did see this, and in the book, Masters of the Air, this is the aftermath. This is after they've lifted up the turret, but this is the aftermath of a turret that failed. You see the guns are oriented to the rear, so the hydraulics were completely lost in the bomb gear. They had to land with the gunner in the ball turret, and obviously he didn't survive the encounter. but it is a real deal. Anyway, Masters of the Air, some other good book. BBC did a SAS had raids that they're doing in Afghanistan, and they really kind of boiled down to kill. Well, okay, you either have your size fight a counterinsurgency or you don't. If you want to read the quintessential book on the British fighting with the ruthlessness that, frankly, they might seem civilized if you're the 13 colonies until Bannister Tarleton shows up and burns your church down. Or in the case of the IRA in 1974, 75, the British send the SAS to Northern Ireland. Great book called Big Boys Rules, all about that if you think you're going to be a terrorist, individual British soldiers at a pub, the Brits will send the SAS. What is it? Mark Urban. Yeah, great book. They will send these guys, and they will throw out the rule book because you decided to play by Big Boys rules. Anyway, it's a terrific book about ruthlessness in counterinsurgency. If you want to read about the origin of the SAS, or if you're a Peaky Blind, then you'll want to get this book, Rogue Heroes by Ben McIntyre. The creator of Peaky Blinders, this is in the can. There's a multi-season, 8 parts per season series that's about to debut on BBC. This is a great book. This is about the origin of the SAS in World War II. Amazing stories, larger than life personalities like the inventor of the SAS, David Stirling, the gigantic drunken Irishman, Paddy Mayne, just these legends. These guys were all black sheep in the British military. They found a home in the SAS, and part of it there was no rules. But anyway, Rogue Heroes is going to be on BBC and Hulu, I think, in August. But if you like Peaky Blinders, I'm assuming, I posted the trailer. Anyway, so there you go. I think that's our first live stream. And we've been doing this for an hour and 12 minutes now. Well, anyway, if Sunday works out for all of you, make sure you mention it on Patreon. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to, I don't have a deal with Amazon or anything like that, because that would, I don't pay for play on endorsements, or else you can't trust my endorsements. But I do mention books and stuff like that. Amazon happens to be the best, cheapest place, or you can drive to Powell's in Portland, like, we might do tomorrow on our way to the Pacific Ocean. So anyway, if you are a salty bastard or big kahuna, again, big thank you for migrating to Patreon. This is the way it is in the future. I'm sorry about ConnectPal, but they couldn't expand their offerings to live streaming and video and stuff like that. And then they imploded. So I'm going to continue this pursuit. This seems promising. And go Giants! Death to the Dodgers! And we will talk to you soon. Thanks for coming here tonight, Sunday night, and we'll start a discussion thread on Patreon about Sundays, Fridays, or whatever. Anyway, I've got vacation this week, so we're going to be trying a couple different things. I don't think Patreon is censory. But then again, I'm not going to sit here like describing, how to use a stiletto on Kamala Harris. So it's not really part of the programming anyway. So I'm not going to worry about it. But anyway, thank you everyone very much. And the super secret link seems to have worked.